Hello, my name is Kyle Thomas. I am a pop culture astrologer. I work for Cosmopolitan Magazine, astrology.com, and horoscope.com. I work with the people all over the world, actually, and I use the stars to help guide people to ultimately show them that they can get everything that they want if they use the currents of the universe.
What do you think people's first impression of you is?
Interestingly enough, in astrology, we have different parts of the chart that actually show how we interact with people, how we are in partnerships, and also how people perceive us. And that's one of the most important indications of where someone's natal chart is. So, for instance, I am an Aries rising. So, people would perceive me with Aries qualities. I tend to be a leader, I tend to be dominant, I tend to be outspoken, loud, intense. All of that fiery energy is something that people typically see when they first meet me, whether that be my physicality or the way that I operate in an interaction. So that's definitely something that you would see by, getting to know me and then also looking at my chart. Another thing that I do in astrology is I look at what planets are in that first house. And that would also give a lot of information about my physicality and my temperament, but also anyone else as well. And so, for instance, I have Jupiter, which is the planet of luck and expansion, and also Venus in my first house. So people would start to see some of that energy permeate from me ultimately. So, for instance, Jupiter being that big planet, sometimes people may perceive me as very optimistic or over the top or large or loud or influential. Venus is the planet of beauty and attraction and pleasure. And so I also try to, well, naturally would have an ability to kind of create a rapport with someone or to try to make sure that I put a lot of attention into my physicality. So, that's a little bit about the ascendant and the rising sign and how I think people would perceive me.
Dare I ask, how did you get into all of this?
Well, interestingly enough, I've always been very attracted to the esoteric or the spiritual, or wanting to sort of understand different ways of viewing the world in order to understand who I was and how I operated within it. And then also, by extension, to understand other people. And I've always been attracted to storytelling as well. And so, after time of seeing certain patterns repeating, and that's the big thing that astrology shows us, is that we're invested in these patterns of growth. We're invested in these patterns of evolution and change. And if you know what's happening, not only can you make a prediction, but you can live a more fulfilling life. And that's what I've actually really focused my professional business around, is looking at your chart, looking at the currents of the universe, and then showing you that there's a path ultimately to get anything that you want. And whether that's more money or career success or true love or embracing your relationship or anything of that nature, by working with the currents, you're not fighting against them. So, going back to, your initial question, I really did, growing up, I studied all sorts of different religions and spiritualities. And finally, after seeing the patterns of astrology, I really wanted to know more. And that has kind of led me to be where I am now.
That is so cool. So you talked about when you kind of move with the currents and you align everything and you learn how all these things come together.
Yeah.
How do you resist thinking this is the way it was supposed to be because this is what I figured out through this versus balancing that with what's actually happening?
Well, everything that I always see always happens. So there is no incongruence. Let's put it that way. That's why astrology works. One of the things about my brand is I really want to hopefully guide people to live the life of fulfillment and really capturing all of the things that the universe can bring you of happiness and fortune and love, but also respecting the challenges and the life lessons as they happen too, because there's always an ebb and flow. There's everyone's always having some area of restriction or some area of challenge, but there's also an area of blessing. So by looking at that full comprehensive perspective, I think that it really can not only empower you but help you to lead a happier life too. So
I love that. So what does living a life of fulfillment mean to you as Kyle?
For me, I really love to, I'm very career focused. I've always been that way. I'm extremely hardworking. I put my professional life very, very high at my priorities. There will be times when I'm working 12 to 16 hours a day, every day for months on end. And that can be draining and that can make me sacrifice different things in my life. But the thing that I think that has been the most beautiful about going through this process, throughout the decades of my life thus far, is that I have seen different challenges and gone through different experiences to help me appreciate all sorts of different things that life has brought to me. Whether that be personal relationships, my health, my family, my kitty, my creativity, the blessings that have come to me so that I can find time to really appreciate each of them. And that's one of my favorite things too, is that by looking at the stars, not only can I, because astrology isn't necessarily like a psychic thing. You can be intuitive and have psychic ability, and that can enhance your astrological work. But it's not necessarily, you don't have to be psychic, like I said, to do it. And what I do, not only for myself, but for clients, is that I actually map out everything for them and for myself. So I know when's a good time to focus on something. So for instance, if I know that to conserve my energy, my resources, because they are finite and they are for everybody, then you know what to focus on at any given time. So you are able to get that all. I'm living one of the most beautiful years of my entire life. And I'm so grateful for that. And the interesting thing is that this has been one of the most tragic and difficult years for most people that I know. And of course, I've had periods of time, and I certainly miss my friends, and I certainly miss socializing or going out and about or exercising in a gym or, traveling or all of those kinds of things. But by taking a step back, and I think hopefully a lot of people, like I said, hopefully have been able to kind of turn within at this time. It makes you validate yourself and realize, by looking in the mirror and looking at what you have, what truly makes you happy and fulfills you, rather than spinning your wheels and wasting your time at things that aren't going to, at the end of the day, like I say, fulfill you. So, like I say, I always try to come from a place of gratitude. And that's really, I love that. And it's like every night before I go to bed, I thank the divine, and I list the things that happened that day and the people that I interacted with and the people that I got to hopefully touch and connect with, because that is a blessing to me. And I live a very unique life. I don't know anyone that lives a life like I do, and that's cool. But I don't want to take that for granted, because there have been years where I could barely buy food. I could barely afford rent. And I had to go through that though. And even through my chart, I could see why, because here I am now, and I value things. I think in a hopefully really true and authentic way.
You talked about adversity or going through things that made you realize that why you went through them, even as a kid or as a younger person, things that happened in your life, whether it was, health or other things. What is something from your past that you recognize as a true either turning point or teaching point for you to get you to where you are now?
Totally. Well, one of my main specialties in astrology is relationships and love. And I've always been a romantic. That was one of the reasons that I first was drawn to astrology, is because I wanted to know if this person and I were compatible, and I wanted to know why things were happening. And then it's interesting to reflect back on all of those specific situations, because now, being a much more advanced uh, practitioner of astrology, I can go back to that and see why those things were affecting me in that way, whether they were eclipses or transits of planets, or if there was, a progression going on, whatever it be. And these cycles, like I said, repeat. And so I can see when they will happen again, whether it be about new opportunities to grow in relationships or things of like that. We also look at the different planets in our chart, and we see what they rule. And for instance, Pluto is the planet of rebirth. It's kind of like a phoenix sort of energy. And it's been very active in 2020. So that's why we're going through some of these situations. I mean, we're having some of the most rare celestial events that we've ever experienced and we ever will experience this specific year. And, going back to that Plutonian energy, though, it's all about that transformation. It's about that rebirth, that resurrection sort of motif. And so we can look at someone's chart and see where they're constantly recreating themselves and how they're going to transform, throughout their life repeatedly. And for me, it falls in my sector of partnerships. And so my relationships have always been one of the most important teaching tools of the universe about my path, my strength, my abilities, my perseverance, where I need to go. And so those mirrors, in essence, have allowed me now to mirror you or mirror people all over the world. And hopefully, through that fiery energy, heal people and enlighten people and inspire people. And that really, I look back at all of those heartaches and those hardships, and I'm not obsessed with them anymore. I'm not hurt by them anymore either. And that is a really beautiful place to be because, being a Taurus, I hold on to things very intensely. And there were times I was very in love and I didn't know when I would be able to move on and when I would be able to understand the lesson, I think, fully. And being on the opposite side of many of those different, either destructive or toxic relationships, and not all of them were bad. I had to learn and release good relationships too. And that's what's made me, I think, not only a better human being, but a better storyteller, a better artist, a better astrologer. And that's, what has allowed me to rise.
I love it. And also a better communicator
Oh,
and in
thanks.
your future relationships. I think that's so heartwarming and it is inspirational. And you have such an amazing energy. I know we're only on Zoom and I hope that I speak for other people that are watching, but I just want to jump in the screen. Like I was just like, I don't know. I am super drawn to you and I am super interested in everything that you're saying. And I find it fascinating.
Thank
And
you.
yes, and I do. I think this is really neat. And so beyond what people's typical definition of astrology or something like what you do would be, right? What is something that would surprise people to know about you?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I feel like I might have already kind of hinted a little bit about it. Like, since I've been walking and talking, I've been a storyteller. So, I mean, as soon as I could pick up a crayon, as soon as I could, start performing, I always wanted to speak and tell stories. And, that was just so important to me because I have all of this, it's like I was born with so much to give and so much to say and so much to create. And, I wrote my first novel in full when I was 14, but I had written hundreds of stories and short stories before that. And, so that's been, something that's really big for me is about being a storyteller. And, like I said, I studied ancient myth. I studied ancient civilizations and gods and goddesses and pantheons and, spirituality, because I feel, like I said, that there's so much wisdom in that. And that's, granted, we talked about it, but that's not something that I feel like most people really know about me because, even the way that I am writing an individual horoscope for you or for a Pisces or for Sagittarius or Taurus or anyone, I try to tell a story every single month. And in a lot of my writing, I talk about it in the sense of this is the next chapter in your 2021 storybook. Or, this is the most important chapter for you, Aquarius. Like all of these kinds of things, because if I can help people to kind of see that you do have chapters of your life and you do have books of your life that you can open or close, it, I feel like, helps you paint a more specific picture of who you are as a character on that journey, and perhaps even the other characters that you interact with and why they were there.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. And I think that's really a cool way to put it. Like you said, this chapter, this story,
Mhm.
versus just, I'm going to read my horoscope in the Daily Times today.
Yeah, which
So,
I like, can't wait to be and all of that stuff too, but one piece at a time.
no, but I mean, in terms of the way you have people view it for themselves, is what I mean.
Yes.
Versus like, oh, I have to check my horoscope today just to see, versus streaming it along as the story of your life and reading
Yeah,
it with purpose.
totally. You are the hero on your hero's journey, and that's why I always look at like the archetypes. And by me, granted, it's so interesting to see like how I've evolved as an artist, as a writer, as a storyteller, as a performer, all of these kinds of things. And I see why they led me to be here now, and it's like, I'm so grateful to have that knowledge and that ability to reflect on it. And that, like I said, I think helps me to speak and write in such a way that you can look at yourself as that too. And it's not that necessarily that, because I feel like a lot of people look at astrology just for the predictive quality of being like, all right, when am I going to find this? And it's almost like you're at the mercy of a god, or at the mercy of things that you can't control. And there is a truth to that. However, which way you want to look at it, whether it's esoteric or, a pseudoscientific sort of way. But the thing is, it's like, if you know that you are that hero, if you are that heroine, you can really create more of an endearing story that speaks to you, and is not going to be as scary, because I feel like a lot of people are afraid to act, and I'm not. But that's my Aries rising. I'm like, no, I'm going to take over. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to do what I need, because I can't wait. I don't know, if well, I mean, granted, I like, can read the stars, but like, if who knows if I'll get that chance to say that exact thing to that person that might change their life, you know?
But no, I'm beyond grateful for your time today. You are so multifaceted and you have so many amazing things going on, that the fact that you took time to sit down with me today is both humbling and amazing.
It's
So,
an honor. Thank you so much for giving me this outlet to speak with you and to connect with whoever connects with us here.
absolutely. So, I am going to ask you my final question as we close out for today.
Sure.
As you are not walking around in the world because you're not going anywhere, as you mentioned, but as you are interacting with people, as you do move about, if you have the opportunity to hold up a sign that says one thing about Kyle, what would you want people to know?
I think I just want to make the world a better place. I think I just want to bring more light wherever I go. And I hope that I do that. I think that's what means the most to me.